I am thrilled to talk with Sarah Anderson today, class of 2022. Sarah is our current student body president. She is the FEMBA Council president, over 900 students, and she is the president. So you're going to get to hear kind of some perspectives on leadership real time as lived during a pandemic, while she maintains two different careers. She's got, the day job as a director of systems and organizational development for Concord Real Estate. She also has, because this is Los Angeles and everybody's like this, she's got the side gig, right? She's got the side hustle where she is the owner and creator of Sarah Anderson Photography. She's a non-traditional education. She comes to us with a undergraduate in photography, a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Photography that she earned from the Savannah College of Art and Design. And back to the sermon, she is a preacher's kid, just like I am a preacher's kid. And as luck would have it, this is the second week in a row. Last week, Stephen Johnson, my guest, was a preacher's child. So I don't know what we're on a run right here. But with all that said, she's also very patient because like, when's this guy going to let me talk? With no further ado, Sarah, thank you so much for being on Drive Time today.
Dylan, thank you so much for having me. This has been a long time coming. We've been talking about this for a while. And interesting enough, tomorrow is actually my last day as FEMBA Council president. I am passing the torch, which seems a little crazy. I am 1 quarter away from graduation, and thinking back on, where this whole journey started, I think it's so interesting to reflect on how much has happened in 2.5, 3 years. So for all y'all out there who don't know me, which is most of you, my name is Sarah Anderson. I am a FEMBA 2022, which means I graduate in a little under 4 months. My background, like Dylan said, is a bit non-traditional. I am actually born in North Dakota. So we do exist. There are a couple of us, believe it or not. I was born in Fargo. I have never seen the movie. I probably should, but I was born in Fargo, although I was raised and spent most of my time in Midwest Ohio. So Northeastern Ohio, kind of Cleveland, Canton, Akron area, but very, very small town. I think our town is smaller than the population of Anderson.
Wow.
We have about 1,200 people in our town. So, the question becomes, how does someone like me, potentially end up in Los Angeles? And I think that's been an interesting journey. As Dylan said, I am a non-traditional. I originally went to undergrad at the Savannah College of Art and Design. So I decided to do art school. The interesting thing about art school, they teach you how to be an artist. They don't teach you how to be a business person.
Not at all. Not what we're interested in, right?
Not even close. So, graduated a while back, actually. I'm one of the older FEMBAs. I actually graduated undergrad in 2007 when the economy fell out the first time. So that was fun. And then kind of worked odd jobs here and there, did independent contractor work, did weddings, did film stills for the film and television industry, did theater stills for the theater industry. And then about 7 years ago, moved out to California, decided that I wanted to see the sun more than 5 days a year. Ohio is very well known for being very cloudy. I actually have some interesting stories I could tell you about that. Did
you know anybody? I mean, did you have a lifeline out here, or how'd you pick SoCal, NoCal?
So essentially, the reason that I initially picked it is because I did want to try and get into the film and television industry doing film stills. So actually get into IOTC, get into the union. And then I moved out here and I didn't know anybody.
Wow.
I essentially told myself that I wanted to move to Los Angeles before I was 30.
Nice.
And yes, that was my goal. When I was, 24, 25, I basically just made that decision, because that's evidently how I do things in my life. I made that decision. I said, this is my goal. And I beat it by, I think, a month and a few days. I moved out here, I think, August 22nd, and my birthday was September 30th.
Oh, just under the wire.
Just under the wire, but I did it. And so then I got out here and I tried doing the industry stuff, kind of realized that I was floundering, got some, just the regular, kind of 9 to 5 jobs. All the jobs I was getting ended up being very much in management, business development. One of the first jobs I was out here, 2 weeks after I got hired, my boss basically said, I think you've got the ability to grow this business. I want you to go find us new clients. I was like, okay, how do I do that? He said, have fun.
Thank you for my training. I appreciate that. Not even at all.
Thank you for my training. So one thing kind of led to another thing. I was doing management. I ended up, now I'm currently, as you mentioned, director of systems and org development at a property management company. Again, doing, management, and now doing a lot more with developing workflows, systems, standard operating procedures. And so I actually started my journey going to Anderson because I got laid off. I got laid off from my job. They essentially eliminated the position entirely.
Sure.
It wasn't even like I got, fired and somebody else took the job. I got laid off, and I thought, well, this is stupid. Here I am. I've got all this talent. I have an undergrad degree that I'm not fully utilizing because trying to be a business person, I was essentially pricing myself out of business. I didn't know what my overhead should be. I didn't know, what my pricing should be. I didn't know what my price structure should be. I had no idea how to do networking. Everything I was trying to do, I just attempted to pick up on my own. So I decided I wanted to go to grad school. And I'd always known I wanted grad school, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I told myself, I'm not going back and making that investment in grad school until I know what I want. And so I decided I knew what I wanted. And then I realized, well, trying to go to a top tier business school when you have absolutely no business background, no econ background, no finance background, no accounting background, that was going to be a lot of work. And took the GRE 3 times.
Wow.
During my application process, the company that I'm currently with actually did a merger slash hospital takeover. And so there was a possibility I was going to lose my job again. Which doesn't really work when you're applying for FEMBA, because one of the requirements of FEMBA is that you're working.
It's the first 2 words in our title, fully employed. We kind of, that's like a big deal for us.
Yep, that's a big deal for us. So, so essentially, after everything, I got in, and then it was all about kind of making the most of it and being very, very intentional about what I was going to do while I, essentially was at business school. So that's a little bit of background on me. Those are kind of the broad strokes. So.
Well, and I didn't even say this at the outset. We're recording this in March, so it is Women's History Month, and I'm not a women's history expert by any means. So it's not exactly my lane. My lane is more successful people sharing their success such that other people can drive their own change, right? I'm really interested in telling human stories. But, in honor of half of the planet, you're a leader. You are our student body president. In the transition from all the way COVID to whatever we want to call this right now, the squishy end of, knock on wood, right now there's a war in Europe. It's like leadership locally in California, what's going on with everything that's happening in our state, what's going on with the pulse of our student body, how does the FEMBA population deal with this contrasted with our daytime student population, with our executive MBAs, with our PhDs, faculty, research, staff, morale. It's such a soup, and there's no manual, just like you're training to be a salesperson. So, but looking at leadership from the lens of women in leadership, any reflections, either your own personal people who you admire, Any thoughts about that?
So I think when I think about women in leadership, I think that for me, it started very close to home.
Hmm.
And that is, it started with my mom, and it didn't necessarily start with her because she was, an overt leader. It started with how she lives her life.
Hmm.
My mom was, she grew up, and she was in college, I believe in the 60s, I think is when she was in college. And that was not a time when women would get their education and then would go out on their own. It was a time when women would get their education, typically in secretary or nursing or education. And then a lot of them would move back home, or into an area close to home and close to family. And they, would usually get married. And my mom kind of broke that mold for her family. After she graduated, she told her family she was not moving back home. She was going to stay in Pittsburgh, which is where she went to undergrad, and she was going to work. And for the next decade, she worked, she supported herself, she struck out independently and did for her. And she ended up meeting my dad when my mom was on a sabbatical, and my dad was in seminary.
Hmm.
And because my mom is a teacher, and so she is a leader in her own way, and I'll touch on that. But my mom met my dad and decided, that it was time, and she had found the man that she wanted to be with, and so they got married. But even now, she has this fierce drive, an independence, and a drive that when she puts her feet on the ground, she goes all day. She can still run circles around me. She comes out
Wow.
for vacation, and I need a vacation after the vacation, because I mean, this woman is quite possibly the most driven, motivated, just get everything you can out of life person. And so watching her live her life with that type of intentionality um, was a very strong thing for me. And watching her not shy away from adversity,
Hmm.
challenges, the unknown was a very important thing that she instilled in me. And as a leader, part of the reason I feel comfortable, or at least capable of being a leader, is because I'm not afraid of the unknown. I know that I will be able to figure out how to handle a situation that is put in front of me.
Hmm.
It's also probably part of the reason why I, moved 2,000 miles away and struck out on my own in Los Angeles. And my mom will be the first to tell you that while she'd love to have me closer to home, she knows this is exactly where I need to be, and that I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing. And so I think that the definition of leadership can oftentimes be widened, because she
Hmm.
may not have ever been the president of something, or the head of a company, but she in many ways was the head of our family. She was a teacher for 30 plus years. She stepped back from teaching to raise me and my brother, and then she went back. She decided that she was not done teaching yet, and I think I was 13. She went back and she, started up again. She, re-upped on all of her certifications, and
Yeah.
she ended up teaching another, 15 or so years. And in that classroom, she was magic.
Aw.
Like she was just the way that she worked with the students, and she had the little guys. She was kindergarten, first grade.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was teaching them their letters, teaching them their numbers, teaching them to read, teaching them to add, kindergarten, first grade. And I think that there is something very powerful to that. And she might be called, an unsung hero. And I think there are probably a lot of unsung heroes around. And I think a lot of times they are the people that are behind people like me, who
Hmm.
decide to take a position of leadership, such as I did with, FEMBA Council president.
Well, that's awesome. Like what a blessing. I mean, we all have parents and they do their best, no matter how it looks, right? Till you've walked in a parent's shoes, right? It's hard sometimes to appreciate because they had their own constraints. And some of us are blessed with parents who did show us a pathway that we might want to follow. And not everybody has that. And that's a huge different starting point for people in life. And it's what a blessing that your mom is that for you.
Yes.
Yes,
very, very much so. Very much so.
Well, as FEMBA Council president, what have you liked about stepping in? Heavy is the head that wears the crown. What have you what have you liked most about that experience? Because that was a unique part of your MBA. Not everyone will have that. I mean, we have 50 plus clubs and organizations. There's lots of places to step up at Anderson. And what I love about FEMBA Council is our student governance, and we have it's a very like left hand, right hand collaborative. In my observation, the school can't run. Judy used to say, "Yeah, I have the dean title, but the students run the school." And in this crazy COVID Zoom adjustment-y thing. So, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about governance? What would you suggest for anybody who's looking at mapping a path of leadership, growth, and development? Tell us about being FEMBA Council president.
Yeah. So I think to really tell you about FEMBA Council president, I have to walk back a few years. I told myself, if I got into Anderson, that I wanted to make sure that I was intentional about promoting change and making a difference and leaving a mark. So I told myself that if I got into Anderson, I would be council president my third year.
Wow.
That was something that from day one was one of my goals. And so the first thing I did during Leadership Foundations is I figured out the first inroad, and I was an internal rep.
Okay.
And for those of you that don't know, and the term is actually changing. In the future, they are going to be called academic affairs reps.
Okay.
So we will now have a VP of academic affairs. It's a little bit less, internal, external was a little confusing. So essentially, my job the entire first year was to keep our section informed. And so that was really the first step.
And just as a term of art, a section is the name of you're in a group of 65 to 70 people, and those are the people you see when you go to class, and we call that a section.
Yeah, those are your Tuesday, Thursday, your all day Saturday, your hybrid. And so I was section 1, which is all day Saturday. So that consisted of me communicating with the professors, doing the mid-course surveys. If students had questions, I sent out a weekly newsletter that basically said, hey, these are the events, these are our assignments. And so that really was my first taste at having that responsibility of being a facilitator of some type. I was also the internal rep when we went remote. So the week before winter finals, I'm still not 100% sure how I passed my finals because we went remote 72 hours before the Saturday final. And those 72 hours are just a gigantic blur of me emailing and communicating with the professor and the students and the students and the professors. And, and so having that little bit of chaos and
a little bit of chaos.
A little bit.
Smidge, just a little smidge right before finals.
It's not that big a deal,
Finals, we'll smidge a little.
Exactly. It's not complicated to turn an entire university to the remote Zoom world. And so I got done with that. And I thought, I can do this. I think I handled myself well. I got positive feedback from the students that they felt like I handled it well. And I think that's an important thing as a leader. I think it's important to constantly be listening and getting feedback from the people that you're, leading. And I got I got positive feedback that I had handled it well, that everybody had been informed, that everybody knew what was happening. So then in my second year, I ran for a VP position, which is basically there is what's called an executive board, or e-board for short, and those are your executive leadership on FEMBA Council. And so I ran for VP of Alumni Affairs. And so my second year, then I was on e-board. So I had, additional meetings. I was helping kind of set the strategy. And then at that point, it was all remote. So now it was a matter of, how do I take programming and make it engaging in the Zoom environment, especially with alumni? But I looked at that as an opportunity, and I said, well, now I don't have to worry about getting alumni to campus. Now alumni can be from anywhere. So we did this series of what I called WeWick panels, which is what I wish I knew, which was essentially alumni sharing the things they wish they had known before coming to Anderson, before starting Anderson. So it was, you are just starting Anderson. Here's the way that you can make the most of it. Here are the things that I maybe made a mistake on, or that I didn't do soon enough, or that I wish I had done, that I wish I had learned. Now they're, giving us the benefit of their learnings. So that was year 2. And then year 3, I ran for and was elected, president. And it changes when you're president, because my job is no longer to really execute programming. At that point, my job becomes, in my opinion, completely behind the scenes. My job becomes promoting the ideas of my e-board. It becomes ensuring that the people on that executive council have all the resources and all the support that they need to execute. The president comes in with an agenda. Don't get me wrong, I had things that I wanted to accomplish. But at the end of the day, my job in many ways was to keep the train on the tracks. And I think that was especially critical during, the pandemic, because you had one class that had started in person, gone remote, and now was going back to in person. You had one class that had never been in person. And you had one class that was coming in, because fall term, we were normal. They were coming in to live teaching. And so for them, the masks were normal. The testing was normal. All of that was normal. And then we turned around and had to go remote again. So my agenda very much changed from wanting to kind of promote and to advocate for new things and to kind of be that visionary. I instead really had to become that stable ground, as I call it. I had to become this solid place that people could come to, because everything else was falling down around them. And a huge part of that was being in very close communication with administration. I have to give a huge shout out to Dean Bernardo and his entire team, all of the deans, because they have been so open and so willing to hear student feedback and student perspectives. And I have a monthly meeting that I've been on with my e-board with, the deans, the academic deans, the faculty deans, the main dean, where we have provided feedback and they have asked us questions and we have made recommendations. And that is the type of change, and that is the type of foundation that not everybody's going to see. My goal is that people don't need to remember that I was president this year. If people remember the programming, if people remember that they had a good year, that they had good relationships with their professors, that the programming and the social events happened without a hitch and they were enjoyable. If they remember that they were able to do OCR and that they had all of their questions answered for OCR, if they remember that they got to connect with alumni, none of that is me. That's all of my team. That's all of my VPs. that's what the students are going to remember, and that's fine, and that's great. You know, if I was able to work in the back systems to make sure that none of the students had to stress about those things, that was my job. And I think that that more than anything encompasses really what I wanted too, because, you know, I feel like I did make my impact in the best way possible, you know, and moving forward, my hope is that this next e-board was inspired because the FEMBA Council meetings were run in a way that brought back a consistency that maybe was lost during the pandemic. And that the next round of leadership is inspired and is excited to step into leadership because they saw our e-board be able to execute. You know, I think that's what it really comes down to. And being willing to accept that there was going to be a whole lot of stuff that I was going to have no idea I was going to be stepping into. You know, we were live, we were remote. You know, COVID happened, then Delta, then Omicron. We're trying to figure out, you know, dual modality. You know, we had to, like, just all of those different things, and just going through and figuring out the day to day was so important.
It really was. And sometimes leadership doesn't look visionary.
No.
Sometimes it looks very practical.
Yes.
And very tactical.
My hope is that this next year, this next e-board will get a chance to do all the visionary stuff. You know, that would be fantastic. And if they can do all the visionary stuff, because there was a year that, you know, our e-board was able to just put some pieces back in place, then that's a win. That's a huge win.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I forgot to tell people at the start, we had this killer, I think one of the most creative titles for this interview we've ever had. I am this is the title that's on the when you registered. I am an enigmatic contradiction. My time as an extrovertedly introverted, creatively logical leader.
You want me to unpack that?
Yeah. Tell me, you know, your presidency's over tomorrow. You know, your completion is nigh. And, you know, there was the pre-Anderson Sarah, there's the on the court during Anderson Sarah, and now there's this, you know, it's like, oh, the chrysalis has to break out of the, you know, to become the butterfly. There's this other transformation as you approach graduation, right? That's a whole other stair step.
It is.
So, you know, yeah, like, what do you know now you didn't know then? Or what would you maybe offer for people about the journey writ large?
Yeah. The most important thing I would offer people is that growth is uncomfortable. And so there is something about living intentionally uncomfortably. And I'll say that again because it's a mouthful. Living intentionally uncomfortably. The sign off on my signature when I write emails is live intentionally. And part of that is because it is so easy. And I fell into this. I mean, I graduated in 2007. I didn't start grad school until 2019. It is so easy to get into a way of doing things, to get into a job, to get into a career, to get into a track, and to just kind of let that be, just kind of keep going with that. And one of the things that I remember is that coming from a small town, you know, there's discussion about what we're going to do after we graduate. And for some people, that small town is exactly what they want. Raise a family, have kids, they go to the high school that you went to, and there is something beautiful about that. There is something fantastic about that. But then there's also this desire for some people to get out of the small town and to grow. And one of the challenges is it's very hard to do that because it's very uncomfortable. And it is a lot easier to stay in the small town, or to stay close to home, or to stay in the job or the career path that you're wanting to be in. And so for me, a huge part of every day when I wake up is, I think, what am I doing intentionally today? And going back to the title, an extrovertedly introverted. Okay. The people that know me the best know that I am very much an introvert, in the sense of I can be a very, very private person. I'm very good at talking with people, but it takes a lot out of me emotionally. It can drain my bucket. And so I'm not the most social person. I'm not the person that wants to go out to social events. So one of the parts of being council president involved me needing to push myself to be visible to the students, to go out to social events, to, speak up, a little bit more, and to really push myself. And so I think that anybody that wants to do the FEMBA experience, it can be so quick. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's all these things I wanted to do that I didn't do.
Yeah.
And part of that is because without intentionality and without reminding yourself that you are going to be intentional at doing something, it's so easy not to do it. And I think going back to kind of that small town, metaphor, I think that there are a lot of people from small towns that have these ideas of the big things that they want to do. I remember talking to people, to classmates, and they would talk about what they were going to do, where they were going to go. I remember some of them were going to come out to LA.
Yeah.
I think I'm the only one that ended up making it out to LA, because it's hard, and it can be very easy to talk about what you're going to do. It can be very easy to talk about the big dreams. One day I'm going to do this. One day I'm going to build this. One day I'm going to have this. One day I'm going to buy this. One day. And you very quickly realize that either that one day is today or it's not. And so that was a big part of it. And going into the enigmatic contradiction, that actually is the fact that I am a small town girl that lives in one of the biggest cities in the world. I am an introvert who decided to be council president. I am a business major that went to art school. And this kind of contradiction has very much followed me in my life. And for a long time, I didn't like it. I thought that it was a bad thing. I fought against it. I was like, why can't I just, not be a gigantic contradiction to myself all the time? And then I came to realize that there's actually something very beautiful about it, because it means that I can relate to people in small towns, and I can relate to people in big cities. I can relate to people who are more creative, and I can relate to people who are more business minded. I can very, very comfortably sit with someone who's an introvert, and I can equally have a conversation with a round of extroverted people. And so there's a benefit to that. And it will probably always take its emotional toll. And I will probably always need that time to refill my bucket. And for all of you that haven't attended Anderson yet, but are going to be attending Anderson, you will understand that when you talk to Matt Gorlick, that we all have buckets, and there are things that fill our buckets, and there are things that empty our buckets. And the things that empty our buckets aren't necessarily bad things. We just need to know that they are going to empty our bucket quicker, and that we're going to need to refill our buckets. So you asked what I learned about myself. I learned that I am a contradiction, and that I'm okay with it. I learned that I will probably always struggle in networking and social situations, and that's okay. I learned that I am a creative soul trapped in a logician's mind. And that in and of itself is a benefit, because my gap client was an architecture firm. So it involved a business plan for a creative firm.
And term of art, GAP, Global Access Program, it's the master's thesis, the 6-month consulting project where you are on a team of Anderson students interfacing with the C-suite of an early stage, high growth, high tech international company that typically wants to do a market expansion and is coming to us for expertise. So
yeah, so essentially, I was on my team, I was the liaison that communicated most directly with the company execs, because there was a level of familiarity there that I had with how creative people think, how creative people operate, and then at the same time, we were running numbers, we were doing business plans, we were running financials. And so seeing that marriage, seeing that intersection, and seeing that I have a very unique skill set at that intersection, and that is something that it would be beautiful for me to be able to pursue. I think all of those are things that I learned, for sure.
Well, I love it. Leaders have to manage their buckets.
Yes.
Right? You can't, life is a marathon, not a sprint, or it's a marathon with many sprints embedded within it. But you can't just hold your breath and run like hell and live a long and healthy life.
Nope.
And if you can't manage yourself, you can't manage others. And leaders have to figure that out. And it's an intensely personal calculus. And the discovery that you did is evident. Here you are, a clearly self-aware introvert who's also our student body president. Like I have to replenish my batteries after I go do networking, and here I am on a podcast talking about myself in public, and it's going to be recorded and shared for years to come. It's like,
but I don't shy away from it.
Right. Exactly.
And I think that's the important thing, is that you can be uncomfortable with something, but you can learn how to benefit from it, and you can learn how to, even enjoy it. I mean, I've been excited for a couple of weeks now to do this. So yes, will this be something that, after I get done, I'll probably just need to, chill out at home tonight, maybe read a book? Absolutely. Oh. Would I shy away from it? No, not in the least. And I think that that's important to understand too, as a leader, is that you are going to have vulnerabilities. You're going to have your own vulnerabilities. I remember having a meeting with my e-board, and I came to them and I said, look, I know that we have an agenda that we have to get through tonight, but I said, I want to know how everybody's doing.
Yeah.
Because I said, I'm going to be honest, I'm not doing great. Yeah. I said, I am frustrated. I said, I am exhausted. I am disheartened. This was right when we were ending up going back into another remote session. Yeah. I knew the student body was disappointed. I knew everybody was disappointed. Administration was disappointed. They didn't want to have to put us all back on Zoom. And so not being afraid to have a certain amount of vulnerability, and not being afraid to, at times, be able to say to the people that you trust and that the people that you are working with, hey, I'm not 100% right now. Because as a leader, people are going to expect from you. They're going to expect a lot from you. And a lot of times they're going to expect from you when you're just as exhausted as they are. Yeah. All the students were frustrated going remote. I was frustrated going remote, but I knew that I didn't necessarily have that luxury of sharing that same level of frustration, because my focus needed to be on how do we manage this? And so we did, and we did a very, successful job of it. But to be able to look back and say it was hard, it was hard, and any leadership position is going to be hard, but it's worth it. I think that's what it really comes. It's worth it. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. Yeah. You're either on the court or you're in the stands talking about someday.
Yeah. Talking about, one day.
And FEMBA is a right here, right now, 2-day experience. This is cross-training for your career and life in a ridiculously intense format because you have a professional life pre-existing, you have a personal life pre-existing, and now you're going to carve out 15 to 25 hours a week for 2.5 to 3 years.
Yep.
That's ridiculous. There's not enough hours in the week, except we graduate 98% of the people who get through the fall quarter. So it's an incredibly nurturing, incredibly demanding reality all at the same time. And we got about 15 minutes here. I want to, if anybody online has some questions, I want to give, in a couple minutes, I want to give them space for that. So I'm going to have to kind of turbo here towards the end. Because I got a couple more things I want to hit, but I also want to hear from anybody who's listening on our new admits or our guests. Any regrets?
I think that I think it's an important thing to talk about because the answer is yes. Do I have regrets? Yes. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Regret, if I'm not mistaken, the definition of regret is basically sad, repentant, or disappointed over something that has happened, especially a lost or missed opportunity. And yes, I did have that pulled up. I pulled up the definition.
Oh, you're not just a walking dictionary.
I'm not just a walking dictionary. It's not one of my unicorn skills. And I think that if you look at regret as I am disappointed that this didn't happen, that I didn't do things this way, and therefore I can know next time going into my next adventure, my next leadership experience, I can be aware that I was disappointed with that this last time, so I'm not going to let that happen again. I think that's where regret becomes an important thing, because I think regret is human. And I think sometimes we like to avoid, or we like to demean those human things. We like to demonize them, to say, oh, you shouldn't have regrets. You can't live your life full of regrets. Well, regrets happen and they're human. My regrets, I had a fantastic ED&I VP that I completely failed to utilize. I didn't know how to utilize that correctly. I have some VPs that I did not get to spend nearly as much time with as others. So I have some regrets around how I prioritize my time. I had one big initiative that I wanted to do. It was a get on board governance initiative. We are still trying to have a lunch and learn, but it's not going to be what I hoped it was. I'm disappointed. I also, didn't attend nearly as many networking events as I would have liked. I don't necessarily have the network that I think I could have had if I had been a little bit more intentionally uncomfortable. And those are all things for me to realize, and I'm not going to dwell, but I am going to accept that they happened, that I'm disappointed, that I regret them. And now I'm going to figure out how to make sure that the next time I have an opportunity and maybe my bucket, is getting low, I can go, you don't want to regret this next time. You regretted this in the past. Here's your little extra push to make sure that you're not going to regret it this time. And I think that is how we can use regret to our advantage.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and I talk about my 3 MBA regrets in Stand and Deliver, so I'll let people wait until Leadership Foundations to hear mine.
Yep.
All right, my little friend is visiting. Here he comes. He's your little friend. He's the little guy. All right, so this is the surprise question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask. So you get to give 3 bear hugs. You get to give a bear hug to your favorite faculty, your favorite FEMBA friend, someone you did not know before school, and the third, there's 3 F's, faculty, friend, and family. So if you could give a bear hug to any of your faculty, who would you like to acknowledge as a real standout contributor to your MBA?
That is, oof. Can I only give one? No.
No, you're the president. You can double dip, whatever you want.
I can double dip. The first one is going to be Dean Fratius.
Aw.
because I have worked so closely with him as student body president, and he is a man who is willing to just bend over backwards to help you do whatever you need to do. So that would definitely be my faculty. My friend, ooh, wow, that's hard to only pick one.
Yeah. Don't get into a if you need to nominate a team, go for it.
Right?
We are a team-based experience, so don't.
Yes.
This is not to burn bridges. This is to build bridges.
Exactly. No, and actually, I love that, because what I will say, and it's so interesting because I've heard historically that this is exactly how it usually works. You are always the closest to your very first learning team, and even now, I am on a group chat with my very first learning team.
Wow.
Three of the five have had their first child.
Wow.
I've yet to meet any of them, and they're all going to be 2 before I meet them, because one of them's already 2, which makes me super sad. But I would have to give a huge hug to Section 1, Team 1, because even now we are in the process of planning a Section 1, Team 1 get together for the spring quarter. I don't know if it's going to have babies or not, but that is who I would absolutely have to give a hug to, because they, even now, COVID, pandemic, Zoom, 3 years later.
And we can, and first names. We don't have to do last names if we want to, since we didn't ask.
That is going to be Stephen, Vic, Gordon, and Joan.
Awesome.
Those are my 4.
Gordon and Joan. Wow.
Gordon and Joan. Yes. And then for family, ooh, you know what? It's interesting, because I think the person that I would want to give a giant bear hug to is actually my brother.
Oh.
Which is interesting, because I talked a lot about my mom, and I do love my mom.
Of course.
But I have a very, very, very good relationship with my brother. He's actually in academia. He is a college professor. And the older I get, the more I just rely on him and enjoy conversations with him, and him and my sister-in-law still live in Ohio, but they're coming out for graduation. And anytime I get to see him, we have the best conversations, and he can make everybody in the family laugh. He's just as, quirky and as, I think, probably contradictionary as I am. That's probably an unexistent word. I collect those. I make them up and I collect them. And yes, unexistent is an unexistent word as well. These are the little quirks that you find out from me if you let me talk too long.
I love it. Oh, yeah, I have a dear relationship with my sister. So I love my brother and I love my sister both. And its siblings are special. Well, we have a cliche, it takes a village to raise a FEMBA.
Yes.
So, Dean Frasius, your first quarter study group, there is something about the first quarter.
There is. I don't know what it is, but there is.
You're on so many teams while you're here, right? You become a time management expert. You become a team forming, storming, norming, and performing expert. But, there's always that special something about the first group of people that you go through something new and big and challenging with.
There just is.
I love it. Well, those the bear hug, that was my one. I have a couple parting thoughts, but we have some people listening today. If anybody would like to ask a question of Sarah, please hop off camera, because I'd love to share the space. And if not, we'll keep going. But I'll pause for a second. Hey, Ryan.
I'll take a quick question if there's time.
Yeah, there's totally time.
First of all, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Dylan, for hosting per usual. One question I thought might be appropriate here, considering your role as president, and I'm sure all the extracurricular activities you were involved in. One thing that is sort of you talk about contradictions. I've heard some people reference that, understandably, that like clubs and organizations and extracurricular events on campus are sometimes a little less attainable for FEMBA students just due to the scheduling, and obviously that makes sense. But interestingly, I was listening on the way home from work last week, another drive time podcast that Dylan did a couple years ago. I can't remember the woman's name, but she referenced how she literally joined, she was in the hybrid program, she still joined like 10 clubs. And it was just this totally basic thing that came out of, oh yeah, and I joined 10 clubs. And and I'm sure you've like asked a follow-up question about like how that was possible, but I remember at the time thinking like, oh, well, she seems so like nonchalant about it. But so I guess the point is, like, could you speak to maybe, your role in this, or in, as FEMBA president and everything you do there, but the ease with which you feel the student body has to actually participate in a lot of kind of more general extracurriculars, clubs, student government, things like that.
So what I will say is this: the clubs are open to us, and I personally think that the clubs benefit greatly from having FEMBA students, because FEMBA students bring a different perspective. Because we're working, oftentimes we can bring industry knowledge, we can bring network. That being said, it is a time commitment situation, and that's going to be the case even with classes. There are certain classes that are going to happen at like the 4:10 to 7 p.m. timeframe. There are certain classes that are probably never going to be offered on the weekends. So there are, as FEMBA students, definitely some limitations. But I think that is really where it gets into kind of how you choose to use your time. We're eligible to do OCR. We're allowed to do on-campus recruiting. But again, that is a very, very, time-intensive thing. I know one person who has been very active, for example, in the real estate club. But part of that is because that was their club. That's the club they wanted to be in. And so they were willing to work their schedule around that. So I think what I would say is that the opportunities are there, but there definitely needs to be a realistic kind of expectation that you have going in, that you are not going to be able to do everything, and that you are going to have to be selective, and that there are also times where you're going to have to make some tough trade-offs. Do I want to go to this event or that event? Student government, for example, we normally have our meetings during the lunch hour on Saturday. That also happens to be when a lot of clubs will have panel discussions, because that is an open time. So, that's where you really have to make those trade-off decisions of, if I'm committed to student government, for example, am I willing to do the student government as opposed to going to the panel discussion? Or am I willing to take Saturday classes so that I can do OCR on Tuesday, Thursday? So I think that's, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think there has to be a realistic perspective. And I will say, you won't be able to do it all. You really won't. And there are going to be times that a class isn't going to be offered at a time that's available for you, that clubs are going to have events when you're not able to attend. And there are students that get very disappointed about that. And that is one area that you will probably have some disappointments over your 3 years.
Okay. And yeah, none of that is surprising, of course. But I appreciate the insight. I got some advice from another current FEMBA student who said it's really about like what you're putting into it anyway, because if you care enough about whatever it is you're hoping to be a part of, there's presumably some avenue for you to get there at Anderson, and then it's about how you're going to make it happen, as opposed to like them making it easy for you, I suppose.
Yeah.
And just an excellent question, and a way to frame the club opportunity, Ryan, is they're run like professional associations, like joining the Rotary or the Kiwanis or the Lions, or where you pay dues and so they are. The more you put in, the more you will take out, and the Zoomy reality has opened up access where a Tuesday noontime meeting might be accessible for a FEMBA who lives in Orange County or Seattle, where pre-COVID it was less available, and you can't do everything. So the same way, if I look at my philanthropic, how many boards may I be a member of realistically, right? Life has many, and I always think FEMBA's getting you ready for the second half of your career, where you are a remarkable person who is sought after and in demand, and everybody wants a piece of you. Your family wants you, your career wants you, and your civic philanthropic engagement. Mm-hmm. So FEMBA does sharpen your sword a tiny bit about, you have to slice away the noise to true up. I'm blending I'm blending metaphors like
but it's trade-offs. It's all trade-offs. Yeah. And I think that's where that intentionality comes in, because I will tell you, FEMBA Council is the only thing I did. I did not join any other clubs, because for me, this was the thing I wanted to commit to, and I committed to it 100%. Now, not everybody, not every council member on FEMBA Council is going to be at that level of dedication, but for me, that's what it was. And so for me, it was, if there are there things I'm giving up? Are there probably events I'm not attending? Yes. For me, that was a trade-off I was willing to accept. Got it.
No, that's great. I appreciate it from both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it, Ryan. And I apologize on the time. I should have left a little bit more. So, by way of kind of landing the plane, Sarah, and everyone who listened today and who's listening, digitally in the future, thank you for your voice. I think there's something special about the COVID trio, which is a term of art I've never used until right now, but Tharong and Megan and yourself, you guys it's a big deal to be FEMBA Council president, but it's a whole other level to be FEMBA Council president during the pandemic. And each of you, the class of 22, 21, and 20, each of your classes was impacted. A little, a lot, a little and a lot. And we couldn't have done it without you. And Dean Frasia's, give that guy like the Energizer Bunny award of all time. I've worked for incredible people in my incredible career. Part of the benefit of my MBA is I've just worked for unicorns from Siemens all through my time at Anderson. That's part of what you earn, is you earn the right to be in the room with big human beings. And I just think he was the perfect dean for this crazy chapter. Mm-hmm. His family left Cuba because his father's best friend was assassinated, and they showed up in Inglewood with everything they owned in a suitcase. He is an American dream, and it took somebody with that kind of like first generation flexibility to navigate the waters of COVID. And what I've loved about you, you disappeared. Are you back, Sarah? Your video is gone. Sarah, do we have a tech?
No, I'm here. My computer decided that it wanted to die, even though I had a whole charger.
I love it.
I was waiting to plug it in. I was hoping you were just going to talk longer.
Well, I am going to talk, but I'm going to talk about you, and I'm not going to do it if I can't see your face.
I'm back. I didn't want that awkward of me attempting to plug everything in while I moving of the camera. I'm back.
Oh, it's great. Welcome to the world's most bootstrappy podcast. I love it. We got it. And I didn't even ask about, okay, real quick, 30 seconds on the blue chair, and then I'm going to acknowledge you. We're going to land the plane. Tell us about the blue chair.
Oh, the blue chair. So when my last roommate moved out, I was done with the college furniture, let's have the weird futon and the non-matching, chairs and the plastic, table and stuff. So I said, I'm going to buy myself an adult furniture set. I'm going to do this adulting thing.
Yes, let's be adult.
I bought myself this fantastic furniture set, and I have like the rug and the love seat and the couch. And then when I was going, I was like, I need a chair. And I found this really fun blue wingback, I don't know if you can see it, but it's like the wingback chair. And this, my Gap team probably thinks that this is the only piece of furniture I own, because all of my meetings were done in the blue wingback chair. This is my piece of adulting that I like.
Oh my God! Well, a little levity.
This is what happens. This is what happens when you're a FEMBA. You become slightly crazy and you start talking about wingback chairs on podcasts.
Well, a little levity goes a long way, and I will now land the plane. So I mentioned Tharong and Megan and yourself, our trio of COVID presidents, and in each had a wonderful contribution. But what I want to end this interview with, to acknowledge you, one of the things that you did distinctly, which I now have a little more perspective on from your father, from your mother, and from how you've approached your life, living intentionally. You penned a very thoughtful essay, half page, 200-word essay, and you placed it on the board at the start of each council meeting. And it was not like a little bumper sticker. You wrote 4 or 5 very topical, very timely, very personal paragraphs that sat on the board for the first 15 to 20 minutes as everyone came into each of the council meetings. And it was either December or November when you started council with, guys, how you doing? Let's do a little mood check. For me, I'm not okay. And you proceeded to talk about where life was, both personally and collectively, and how it might be prudent not to lose track of the fact that we're still in this crazy chapter. Mm-hmm. We didn't ask for it. It's not ending when we want to. In fact, it's about to throw another curveball at us. And I was just so appreciative. I was actually in the car driving to pick up my son's mountain bike with my family, listening to that FEMBA Council on Zoom, and I got choked up and I had to bring it together, Stafford, because I was driving with my family. But, Winston Churchill was the right leader for London for the siege, right? And nobody liked Winston Churchill before, and everybody loved you, so it's not about that. It's just that he was the right person for the moment. I think Dean Frasius was the right dean for the moment. And I think this year for the class of 2022, what I declare by the authority vested in me, by no one in particular, you've been the perfect president for this, right? It was a time where I think a really real kind of leader was what the moment requested. Mental health has never been a big topic. FEMBAs have always been fine. They're just hardworking, crazy people, but they're fine. But people have been really challenged, and it's been a chapter where we needed to do mood checks, and we needed to look at our buckets, and we needed to raise our hand and cry uncle, and we needed to set some of our visionary aspiration on pause for a minute and just deal with practical things like distributing spit kits and masks. And so, we're better as a student body for having had your contribution. So, Sarah, and I am serious now, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for who you constituted yourself to be. I'm going to be in FEMBA Council. I'm going to be president. You set that as a North Star before the pandemic, and you didn't give up during the pandemic. And I think your voice was the perfect voice. So, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Thank you for your servant leadership. Thank you for everything you brought to this.
Now I'm supposed to somehow follow that up. Wow. Well, then, you know what? I will say this. You're welcome. It is always nice as a leader to hear that what you attempted to do during your time was helpful, was appreciated. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I think I'll just say, you're welcome. And thank you for having me on. This has been, a blast. We got to laugh some. I got to share some, wonderful stories. Hopefully none of them were too embarrassing. I don't know. We'll find out. Maybe I'll get a call from my mom or my brother at some point being like, really? Really? But this has been very nice. And I thank you for the opportunity, because it's always a good feeling when you get to share your voice, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for listening now and into the future. This is Sarah Anderson, our FEMBA Council President, class of 2022. This episode of Drive Time was creatively titled, uniquely titled, I think this is one of our all-time best titles, I am an enigmatic contradiction. My time as an extrovertedly introverted, creatively logical leader. I can't even say it. So thank you all for your attention today. Look Sarah up on LinkedIn. We're recording this in 2022. She's just getting started. She'll be a person to follow. She's a unicorn in her own right. And it's just been a joy to get to spend time with you today, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.